ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 25th of June 2025. In the midst of this tumultuous hot weather that just brews through much of the states, especially in the Midwest over here, still in the 90s today. Walked outside, just nasty. And I know some people here in the Cincinnati area have to work in this weather. Hope all you guys are out there staying safe and cool in these tumultuous, vicious, hot conditions weather-wise, because it is humid. HUMID, the size of the global debt. That's how humid it is outside today. Think heat index surpassed well over 100 degrees today for the third straight day. Actually, check that. The fourth straight day. It's just miserable out here. So hope everyone out there, especially in the Cincinnati area, is cool and living okay in these type of conditions. But if you have to work outside of them, take precautionary measures in terms of staying safe and staying cool. Don't overexhaust yourself because it's not worth it. I had to learn that the hard way. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 25th of June 2025. Lots to get to today. Uh, some new people out here, I see. Just what I do. A boatload of sports topics from the past to the present. Use the past areas and to collide with the present. It helps to build for future understanding as we evolve in some very interesting times in the world of sports, entertainment, and as well as technology as we know it. Opportunities like this gave me the chance to shoot my own stuff for the longest time that I wanted to do. Something I've done over the past year, just never learned how to go about it. But here I am. I'm here. So we're going to get right down to it here real quick. News broke out in Cincinnati last few days. Actually, not really news. It's something we've known for a while. But since some idiot named Drew Garrison, an overweight, bearded punk who wants to involve himself in clickbait because he weighs 300 pounds and doesn't want to pick up a shaver to shave his beard, wants to bring out this news that we already knew all along, that the Cincinnati Bengals players are concerned about this stature of the treatment of their families. Those of you guys don't know, everybody knows, especially the NFL community, after the season, they grade the NFLPA and the NFL, I guess, has their grading system in regards to how they treat the teams, the players, the fans, families, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everybody knows when it comes to the treatment of the players' families, nobody graded worse than the Cincinnati Bengals. And here we are again. Everybody knew this 2 years ago when this stuff first came out. Actually, I'm got this article up. This is back from when some character called Ben Baby, who the hell has their names their child Ben Baby, wants to call these players anonymous. I don't know what the frick the reason is. Why don't you just put your name out there unless you're a real life coward like Ben Baby and Drew Garrison are? And this has come out talking about how the Bengals operation has been a, excuse the language, shit show. I don't like to cuss on this show, but I'll do it for this one time anyways. For the family dynamic, and it was graded the lowest in the NFL this season when it comes to family treatment. I mean, we all knew this from the get-go. I mean, the only thing the Cincinnati Bengals fans, the Cincinnati Bengals ownership, and the Cincinnati media are the biggest group of narcissist cowards who are only in this for themselves. Here's another example of it, and that's why teams and players don't want to come to this area for this reason, because this sort of thing happens, and that's why we have the situation that we have year in and year out. It's been ongoing since this ownership regime took over in 1990, and I guess Drew Garrison, being the coward behind the internet, now he's doing some beer tour, whatever the frick it is, out in Dayton because he wants to weigh 300 pounds and avoid using a razor to shave his beard. Wants to go on some beer, wants to credit for this when everyone knew this for the last couple years. Another clickbait article of theirs, and that's, I get it. But everyone knew this for the longest time, and that's why things happen the way they do. I mean, I'm looking at this more articles. I'm going to discuss this. You know, it's a case of narcissism at its finest, and everybody knows how I feel about narcissism. And it's been the same way here, and it's never going to change. And everyone keeps saying it's going to change. They've been calling for upgrades, calling for this, calling for that when it comes to this particular system. And once the grading comes out, it has a lot of, if you want to put it this, types of views, left and right, good and bad, from the the intelligentsia, or whatever you want to call it. And that's why this is what it is. Look, this is who it is at this point. You can talk about it 50 different ways. This is who they are at this point. I mean, it's terrible. It's insulting. We all know this. Yours truly being one of them. But if that's how they're going to act, it's their prerogative, and there's nothing you can do about it. Because if they really care about it, they should have done this a long, long time ago, didn't they? I mean, we've waited 3 decades for something to do something of significance, and we know how they operate. It's not going to change. And now, of course, coming up in the next few days, it's a deadline to where they have to sign their lease for another 2 years, and we know where that's headed right now. Back to what it was in the back end of the 90s when the stadium and the county was in an impasse, Hamilton County, and we're doing this again. I mean, I still expect them to at least get the 2-year lease signed, you would think, because it's actually next Monday, the deadline is coming, because that's when they have to put the pen to paper on the upcoming 2-year lease, or by the end of 2026, they're done. We'll find out. I mean, I don't partake in this sort of thing either way, because, there's other things in life I'd rather pay my attention to. But since this garners this attention, they wanted me to talk about it. Congratulations. Y'all give me the platform. I'm talking about it. Don't be running your mouths about me when I tell you the truth and you don't like it. Because I told you guys from the get-go after last season to now that you're not going to like what's going to come out of my mouth, because I see things differently than you do. And one thing I've learned as I've gotten older, if you want to go against the grain, go at it. Just because you all have one view doesn't mean I'm going to go join you. I said this all along. This was what's going to happen once all of this came out, especially how you carried yourselves after the week 1 loss to the New England Patriots in 2024. And now we're going to be at an impasse, and it's not going to be pretty. You better hope resolutions come here real soon, because it's going to get a mess, and I don't know how you're going to clean it up. But this has been ongoing for 3.5 decades now, and if it's going to be going on, might as well send them out the door, because nothing is changing. Nothing's ever going to change around here. Who knows what's going to happen and by the time Monday comes around, because the deadline is coming, and you better hope it comes and something is done by Monday. Otherwise, we're going to have a real fiasco over here in Cincinnati. Now to some real wild news, and this is real wild. Anybody that knows me knows I don't partake in conspiracy theories. I don't partake in all of the stuff that everyone wants to talk about, but this is something that deserves its own attention. Apparently, this goes back to after the 2022 season, when the story with the Cleveland Browns trade with the Houston Texans and land Deshaun Watson. The Cleveland Browns give Deshaun Watson the fully guaranteed contract, fully guaranteed $230 million. As we all know, the next season, the number one name in the free agent market was none other than Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson. You know the story with the wild thing there. Baltimore gives him the non-exclusive franchise tag, which was given the two first-round draft picks. Baltimore had the right to match whatever deal they was going to get. And, no team had the interest, whatever the reasons were. And apparently, Baltimore promised Lamar Jackson a 3-year contract, which the whole thing was fully guaranteed. Jackson didn't want it, but then Jackson got a contract on the heels of the contract Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts got. You can trace this storyline. It's up, down, in and out. But now it came out the other day by some podcaster called Pablo Torre, who says, I guess there's a 61-page report that apparently there was collusion to prevent Lamar Jackson from getting a fully guaranteed contract in lieu of what took place before with the Deshaun Watson deal. Now, this is wild. I'm putting this up right here as I'm talking to you this right now. For those who are listening on the iHeartRadio app, I have an article. I'm going to try and interpret this the best I can, because I don't partake in conspiracy theories. I think it's just a wild way to diagnose things. But when something like this happens, and when an arbitrator rules, I guess there were some questions that were asked not too long ago about this. When there's collusion like this, and it's ruled like this, something is a problem. Well, first of all, I don't know why the hell you want to collude against Lamar Jackson. I mean, the guy's a first-class human being, as well as a standout quarterback, the third best quarterback in the NFL behind Josh Allen and number 2 and Patrick Mahomes, number 1. But all of this, of course, is the fully guaranteed contract. Question I have is, are you guys colluding because one player got a fully guaranteed contract and you don't want to give those sort of things out? Or you're colluding because you had a personal bias toward Lamar Jackson for whatever reason that fit your narrative? Because a third of the teams that needed quarterbacks at that time when Lamar Jackson was done with his rookie deal could have used a quarterback of his caliber and didn't want to pay whatever to get him. Because I get it. Baltimore had the option to match. They were probably going to match it. Otherwise, if they wouldn't have matched it, it was going to give them 2 first-round draft picks. I mean, I get the compensation part of it, but is this in the lieu of what happened with the Deshaun Watson deal? Or is this because of something of a different narrative to where the owners didn't want to fork out unnecessary cash for someone of his caliber, especially when one of the rumors all along was the Atlanta Falcons? And, of course, we know what happened after that with the Atlanta Falcons. They got Kirk Cousins off this ACL injury from Minnesota. And that same year, they drafted Michael Penix Jr., but they could have had Lamar Jackson. And you're talking about a backfield of Lamar Jackson and Bijan Robinson. Good luck with that. But that's another topic. What was gained from doing something like this? Because one guy gets a fully guaranteed contract, and then everybody else wants to collude. Not just Lamar Jackson, but there are a few others also in there. I don't remember the names off the top of my head. But what do you get out of collusion on something like this? I mean, if one guy wants a fully guaranteed contract, it's going to have a ripple effect all over the place. Are you going to try to stop the ripple effect? Maybe. But it doesn't matter anyway, because I guarantee you, because Baltimore apparently had an early talk with Lamar Jackson in regards to negotiations. Lamar Jackson is going to probably read this and is going to let people in the Baltimore brass know what's going on. And the best thing about Lamar Jackson, he negotiates his own deals. He's going to have something for the Baltimore office once that time comes. And it's the contract he's going to get is going to set fireworks and bonfires all over the place, because this is going to be what he's going to have on his side after this. And I don't know what's going to happen with the Ravens' point of view, because he's probably going to wind up being a Baltimore Raven for life, in my opinion. But what do you get out of this? How the heck do you put something like this together in a collusion when you're trying to have supposedly a competitive balance, or whatever the word you want to use to describe it? What do you gain out of it? I mean, guess it's as good as mine, because I'm trying to figure this one out. But there was a ruling. There's some people that try to draw that conclusion a couple years ago. I steered away from it because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. When something like this comes out, sometimes those conspiracy theorists might have a leg to stand on. The question is, why was it done? That's something nobody has yet to answer. And it was officially ruled a collusion, and it's really, really crazy. Basically, they give it a timeline of this. It's just too much for me to read into, and there's too much legal jargon. Might have an attorney look at. Might as well have somebody out there bring an attorney out there and have them look at this for simplistic sakes, because this crap is wild. Sheesh. How would you collude against a guy like Lamar Jackson? That's something I want to try to figure out. And now we go to NFL ownership. I guess they had that little fanatics thing over the weekend. I don't know what the frick it's called. I guess Joe Burrow was there among many others. Apparently, one of the people that were there was none other than Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who essentially called his last 2 years a disappointment and an embarrassment, and has called for things to be turned around this season. Maybe if you were too quick to throw let me back up. You had at one point the greatest quarterback head coach duo in NFL history. We know who that is, Brady Belichick. If you weren't so quick to find ways to run him out of New England, you wouldn't have had the situation like this. If you learned how to plan ahead the way you did, you should have, you wouldn't have been able to be in this situation. Because when this sort of thing happens, you better learn how to prepare for the long haul down the road. You didn't. And of course, there's that the documentary about the Patriots 6 championship run on Apple TV Plus, whatever the frick they want to call it. And I guess he wants to make himself the reason why the Patriot dynasty is what it was. That doesn't help your cause either. I mean, you're basically just, again, you've another case of an owner wanting to view himself as a narcissist, wants to be the reason why things are successful, but doesn't want to be the reason why things are a failure. Because look at what happened after Tom Brady left you guys for Tampa Bay after the 2020 season. And look at what happened the year you had Gerard Mayo last season. Now, of course, you weren't going to do anything with that roster last season simply because, you know, everything was just bottomed out. We did draft Drake May, sent Mayo out the door for Mike Vrabel, and now apparently it looks like you had a trending in the right direction. But don't exempt yourself from any accountability because you were one of the reasons why this happened for the last several years of the Brady Belichick run because you knew this was coming and you didn't prepare for it. You basically just sat back, let the things just bottom out and let it pan out till all of a sudden this happened. Problem with you is sometimes you're like a poor version of like Jerry Jones simply because unlike Jerry Jones who blows money for attention purposes, you didn't want to spend the necessary capital to get the necessary resources to keep yourself a competitive team after the Brady Belichick era was ended, which essentially ended in the playoff loss when New England went to Buffalo and got ramrodded by the Bills. I mean, they scored I think like on their first 7 possessions. That was the end of the Belichick run there, in my opinion. But if you want to go ahead and say things got to turn around, let's see the results on the field because you go into some Fanatics event with Adam Schefter doesn't help your cause. Let's see what the end results are going to be because you're trying to exempt yourself from any failure that took place after Tom Brady left for Tampa Bay a few years ago and after the separation you had with Bill Belichick and you brought in Gerard Mayo. We all know you wanted Mike Vrabel all along after Bill Belichick left. We get it. But how you went about it doesn't make you look good. Now you're trying to exempt yourself from everything. That's why you're in the mess you're in. Don't exempt yourself. Get yourself together and actually put together a team for once. Remember what Bill Parcells did to you 3 decades ago because with that famous grocery comment, that's how you act. Maybe Parcells looks good with that comment 3 decades later because that's what Robert Kraft has become. You have a talented team. I think you can't turn it around, but now it's about getting the results in the field. You're not going to be a Super Bowl contender this year, obviously, because the AFC is fully loaded at the top heavy spot when you talk about Kansas, Baltimore, Buffalo, among the many others. But if you want to get this thing turned around, now's the time. You have the personnel. You had a good free agency. You had a solid draft. Generate the results. That's all that matters. And of course, earlier today, it was Aaron Rodgers, one of the real narcissists, coming onto the Pat McAfee show, his favorite hangout, to simply tell the world that this coming season with Pittsburgh might be his last. Might be. We'll believe it when we see it. I mean, he wants to be in the spotlight. He wants to be on the field just to take attention away from everyone else and put it on himself. That's how he was in Green Bay, especially at the back end of Brett Favre's career in that situation, and even the back end of his situation. We saw what happened in his 2 years in New York, where basically he went on some retreat, goes on Pat McAfee's show every other day so he can garner his own personal attention. So this is probably more of an attention-seeking ploy in the most Aaron Rodgers way possible, because his career and legacy will always be narcissism and cowardice, and he showed it again. Don't just talk about how it's going to be possibly your last year. Get out there, play the game, and if you really going to make this your last year, wait till the end of the season, retire, and then back it up and disappear. Because everyone in the NFL community has already been tired of your act for the last 5 years. Everyone has been tired of how you've carried yourself, how you put yourself in all of this television cameras. You love the attention and the spotlight. We all know this. We know you're a narcissist. We know you're a coward. We know what you carry yourself as. Please, if this is going to be your last year, don't talk about it. Get out there, play on the field, and once the season is over, just announce your retirement and just go away. Because you've been doing this for the last 5 to 6 years. Actually, the last time you was relevant was in that home game for Green Bay against San Francisco, where you couldn't even put more than a touchdown on the field, and the San Francisco defense just punched you from start to finish. That was the last time you was relevant. So anything you do is irrelevant until you come out and say you're fully done and you're done with the NFL for good. The world is basically just tired of how you've carried yourself over the last several years, how you carry yourself as a diva, as a narcissist, as a coward, among many other things. You might as well just pack it and be gone. But if you're going to pack it and be gone, don't say it's going to probably happen. Just shut up, make it happen, and go away. Plain and simple. I'm surprised the Steelers actually want to tolerate the baggage he's going to bring unless he wants to leave it at the door, which I don't know if he's capable of doing that. Especially when you consider what the Steelers had in recent years with Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and George Pickens. Now it's before I proceed into the field of boxing, I'm going to introduce my segment I introduced last night. It was Newsflash, Shut Up. Today, it's a whole new different category. This took place yesterday at Chicago, the old Comiskey Park. I don't know what it calls itself these days. It was the fan who apparently made some derogatory, negative comments toward Arizona Diamondback Ketel Marte in alludes to his late mom, who I believe died tragically. It was like 8 years ago. We know what fan heckling can be. We all know this. I see it in Cincinnati. They're the worst at it. I mean, the two worst fans when it comes to fandom are always going to be Bengals fans in Cincinnati and Mike Tyson fans in the 1990s after his losses to Buster Douglas and Evander Holyfield. They're the two worst fan bases of all time, just in general. But when you resort to something like what this guy apparently did to Marte in regards to his family, throwing him out of a stadium isn't good enough. They need to find someone with a baseball bat, have him go into the stadium, seek the individual out, make sure the ball bat is on his skull, and just make sure that skull is crushed. Because something like that, you deserve more than just being tossed out of a stadium. You deserve worse than that. I get it. Fan heckling is going to be its own category. It's always going to be people saying things they shouldn't. But there's that line in the middle that if you cross that line, you deserve worse and the worst possible. For you to slander or say the things that you did to an athlete's family member, especially the parent of one like Ketel Marte, where you saw the emotion on his face in the middle of the field, that fan being thrown out of all baseball stadiums indefinitely wasn't good enough. And I'm not a procrastinator of violence because I think it's, sometimes it can be extreme. But for something like that, when you attack a man's family like that, verbally or whatever, you deserve what's coming to you. I get it. Major League Baseball, I thought, did a good job, the right thing, telling the guy don't go to any freaking ballpark for the longest while. I mean, that was the right move by Major League Baseball. They deserve props. But that guy deserved more than that. I mean, he deserved to have a baseball bat to the side of his head, the bones in his skull crushed, and those bones coming out. Because it's one thing to heckle. It's one thing to be a fan, to cheer and boo. And I know some people say things that can get very outlandish. Something like that, you deserve your face pounded in. And someone should have gave Ketel Marte a baseball bat and give him the right to go to that guy and have his face pounded because that's what he deserved. What a despicable act and what a despicable human being. Good riddance to him. Hopefully we don't ever hear from him ever again because that was just as low as you could possibly go. And I've seen Mike Tyson fans and Cincinnati Bengals fans do some real low things. That might be worse than the both of them put together. That says a whole lot. I mean, a whole lot. Usually I say that to the end, but I had to get that off my chest. Now we're going to touch on the historical world of boxing. And before I touch on the historical, news came out earlier that negotiations have taken place for a fight between Brian Norman Jr. and Devin Haney. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, this Brian Norman Jr. is a problem. And I don't know if I'd be taking this fight if I'm Devin Haney. Because this Norman Jr. is a goods. He's a pretty darn complete fighter. And I'm not going to make any predictions. I don't know what's going to happen from now to when the fight happens. But I'm surprised they're going to go ahead and go through and make this from the Haney side. Now, from the Norman side, we know Brian Norman wants all the smoke. I mean, we saw what he did to Yin Sasaki not too long ago overseas. The left hook that sent Sasaki down and out for the count. And this guy is going to be a massive problem in the division. If Devin Haney really is going to take this fight, he's going to have to be basically perfect. And I mean perfect to even have a chance. Because right now, Brian Norman Jr. is trending up and up and up. Especially when we consider that Bruce Ennis has left the division. And there's really anyone out there at the moment, unless, Ryan Garcia or Ronnie Romero want to grow a pair and fight him, which they don't have the pair to fight each other in a rematch. But Brian Norman Jr. is a problem. And if this fight goes through, You know, I mean, given what happened to Haney over a year ago, Brian Norman Jr. might just beat up Devin Haney if this fight happens. Heard just in a negotiation phase. Who knows what's going to happen? But if this fight happens, Brian Norman Jr. is going to make his coming out party with this particular fight because this is what he wanted. I mean, try to get Boots Ennis. There's some wild situations why that fight never happened. Of course, Tio Lopez doesn't have the balls to fight any real opponent these days. Of course, he ducked Brian Norman Jr. So we're going to get Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney. Kudos for these two for making the fight happen. But from Haney's point of view, he would have to be basically perfect to have a chance to stay competitive in this fight because Brian Norman Jr. is a problem. He showed it last week against Sasaki. His last couple fights, he just wiped out the opponents. And I don't know who would be the betting favorite in this fight, but good luck to Devin Haney because Brian Norman Jr. is hot, and he's hot right now and is sizzling, and he's going to get better from here. He's just getting started, people. Might be the man of the welterweight division for a little while, at the very least. Now we're going to a significant part in heavyweight championship history. This one took place 77 years ago at Yankee Stadium in New York City. This was an anticipated rematch between Joe Louis and Jersey Joe Walcott. This was a rematch of arguably the most controversial decision in heavyweight championship boxing history that took place a year before, where Jersey Joe Walcott floored Joe Louis twice and appeared to have the fight won, only to have two of the judges hand the fight to Joe Louis in a head-scratching decision, to where Joe Louis basically conceded defeat after the fight, saying, that wasn't my best performance, that Walcott had it. We know they both wanted this, and this is probably the last great performance of the career of the great Joe Louis. I mean, he was determined to basically right this wrong, and basically, at the time, at least thought of, to go out, better than he did at the previous fight with Walcott, where he basically didn't get anything going, and Walcott did anything and everything he could. Basically, both guys were pressing for a knockout, especially Walcott, when you consider what happened in their first fight. So we get this rematch that takes place in Yankee Stadium. Remind you, this is the same Yankee Stadium that had the second fight between Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. Louis's finest hour, maybe his last finest hour going in, was going to be this fight because he was determined to put this thing together. So what do we have here? Basically, it started out to where it looked like Walcott was going to do it again, although Louis tried harder, as you would expect. Louis winning probably the second round of this fight, but of course, the right hand by Walcott in the third round that floored Louis, and it looked like for a minute that Walcott was going to do it again. As Louis beats the count, Louis starts to come on a little bit, but as the rounds were progressing, Walcott was doing his best to avoid the lethal right hand of Joe Louis, but Louis was still being persistent, still landing on occasion, but Walcott basically doing the best he can to control the fight and stay away at range from Joe Louis. But as the later rounds started to come on, Joe Louis started to turn it on, and those right hands were starting to find its home. And as they were starting to find its home, you start to see Walcott feel the effects of those punches, because we know for that time, no one had a more lethal punch than Joe Louis. And as round 11 came on, the Louis camp, thinking they had the fight virtually in control, sensing Louis was coming on, was trying to tell Joe Louis basically, Jersey Joe Walcott, to stay away from the power of Joe Louis, and that they're not going to do what they can to avoid Joe Louis. Why? Because you know what Joe Louis was. So he entered the 11th round. Joe Walcott tries the best he could, use the ring, uses his jab, utilizing the ring to stay away from the right hand of Joe Louis. But as the round was pertaining on, out of nowhere, the first right cross that Joe Louis lands, Walcott starts to wobble, and then another left-right combination to where Walcott now is standing right in front of Louis and is pinned on the ropes. 3 more right hands by Joe Louis, and the third of those 3 right hands put Joe Walcott on his back and down. And as Joe Louis is standing in the corner, Jersey Joe Walcott's getting counted out. He gets up at the count of 10, but as he's getting out the count of 10, he starts to wobble all over the ring, and the referee stops the fight. And in the final defense of his heavyweight championship, Joe Louis wins an 11th round knockout over Jersey Joe Walcott to retain the heavyweight title for a record 25th time. The significance is this was the end of that 12-year, 25 successful title defense run of Joe Louis. And he basically retired after this until all the financial problems came up with him eventually later on. But it was almost like he was seeking revenge for himself, given how poor he was in the first fight with Walcott before this. But I think he wanted to leave a more emphatic note to where he wants to show the world he was still Joe Louis. And as the second half of his career started to show, especially after his time of World War II, you started to see him started to slow down. As this fight was going on, he had a bit more of a cagey approach to the rematch with Walcott, waiting for the minute that Walcott was going to make a mistake and capitalize. That's what happened. That moment, Jersey Joe Walcott stood in front of Joe Louis, the perfectly placed right hand, and another combination, and that was where Jersey Joe Walcott found himself in trouble and then eventually knocked down and out by the great Joe Louis. And we talk about that reign of Joe Louis, the most unbreakable record in boxing history. No one's going to get that, not even close. And it was 77 years ago today at Yankee Stadium, the last great performance of the career of the great Joe Louis, when he turned back the hands of time, peppered Joe Walcott in that 11th round in a fight where you could probably say he was losing. The three right hands that followed that put Joe Walcott down and out for the count. Walcott barely beats the count, but as he was beating the count, he started to wobble, and that was all she wrote. Joe Louis's last great performance against Jersey Joe Walcott in that rematch. Maybe not the revenge or the significance of the second Schmeling fight, but you could probably say after how he looked in their first fight, it was significant for Joe Louis. And now we fast forward to a little more than a decade, more than a few years later. This one also took place in New York. This was Sugar Ray Robinson looking to seek history as he was fighting the standout light heavyweight champion, Joey Maxim. And the story with this one was maybe not the result or how it was, maybe the environment it was in. Because you want to talk about treacherous temperatures, the heat was through the roof on this night in New York City, to where they had to change referees in the middle of the fight, and there were fans and media members and even cornermen of both fighters that had to leave the arena because of the heat got to them hydration-wise, and basically it became a mess. The fight wasn't necessarily all that great, but Sugar Ray Robinson was doing enough to look like he was going to have the fight in control and have it won to become the light heavyweight champion of the world. But at the end of the 13th round, because of the heat exhaustion, he collapsed, and that was where Joey Maxim dodged a bullet and was still the light heavyweight champion, given the circumstances. I mean, we know the greatness of Sugar Ray Robinson. That's been documented. I mean, he showed it here. He had Joey Maxim beat. The fight wasn't necessarily all that great. It was more of a stall fest because of the heat. But what happened here was the heat was a problem for not just Ray Robinson, but many others around here. And what happened? Basically, Ray Robinson couldn't go on for the rest of the way to win the light heavyweight championship. He was looking to become the first ever 3-division world champ at that time. One of them, he was right there with Henry Armstrong and Barney Ross and Tony Canzanori. He was going to try to put his name on that list. Couldn't do it because of the heat exhaustion. Again, Joey Maxim didn't do anything to win this fight because Ray Robinson was still Ray Robinson. But the heat got to him. There's an image in Google if you want to look at it. We're in the 13th round where Sugar Ray Robinson was slumped in the corner. Looked like he was dead. I mean, look like the heat really got to him. And it was a real hot day on this particular night. But for Joey Maxim, I mean, he's still a standout light heavyweight. Won the light heavyweight title. Did get this win, but that was his end game. He would lose the light heavyweight title in his next fight to the all-time great Archie Moore, in a fight where Moore just pummeled Maxim. Got a rematch out of it and lost to Moore in a rematch. And that was basically it for him. Had a couple tries again at heavyweight. Did get a win over Floyd Patterson earlier in Patterson's career. But that was basically it. But a standout light heavyweight was Joey Maxim. But on this night, The story of this, a hot night in this particular fight with Maxim and Robinson, where Sugar Ray Robinson collapsed in the corner, and basically the fight was stopped just because of it. This despite Sugar Ray Robinson having that fight against Joey Maxim in control, and it looked like he was going to win the light heavyweight title. Couldn't come out to the 14th round because of the heat. But doesn't deter the fact that Sugar Ray Robinson is still the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. And I close on this last one. And this one is for everyone, especially in the ideology of needing to take care of business. Because both Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns had a doubleheader at the Astrodome in Houston, Texas, 41 years ago today. It was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Ayub Koulibaly for the junior middleweight championship. And it was Thomas Hearns fighting a journeyman named Pablo Baez. This doubleheader was about one thing and one thing only. Both Leonard and Hearns won. They were both looking at 8-figure paydays for that super fight of September 16, 1981. I bring this up because everyone calls every fight a cherry pick, and we've seen cherry picks gone bad, however you want to call it. This didn't happen in this case because you're talking about the extreme focus of both Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns and their respective trainers, Angelo Dundee with Ray Leonard, of course, and Manny Stewart with Thomas Hearns. Got them focused and ready to handle business as both got knockout wins. Hearns demolishing Baez rather effortlessly. It's basically a keep active fight for Hearns because Stewart wanted Hearns to just keep active. But from the Leonard point of view, he fought for the world junior middleweight champ against a very complicated opponent in Ayub Koulibaly, a very tough, cagey southpaw who can make you look worse than what you think. I mean, no one's going to mistake him for one of the greatest things ever. I mean, he didn't really do much in this fight. I mean, Leonard controlled the fight. But Koulibaly did have his moments. He did find ways to survive many of the later rounds, made Sugar Ray Leonard have to rethink his game plan a little bit. And knowing that Leonard had that huge payday with Hearns on September 16, 1981, Koulibaly did all he could to try and survive. But we know the greatness of Ray Leonard. His ability to adapt as the fight went on showed here. I mean, basically the looping right hands against the southpaw, which is something he's always talked about against southpaw fighters. He showed it here, and he got the technical knockout win. And we know the story with this with wins by Leonard and Hearns, set up that giant super fight of September 16, 1981. Still one of the all-time biggest events in boxing history. Basically, it was a decade after the original fight of the century between Ali and Frazier, March 8, 1971. So Leonard Hearns won, had some massive significance when you consider that Ali's career was basically over at that point, because Leonard was the persona that everyone saw in Ali. It was basically the passing of the torch per se, and that's what happened with this over 41 years ago. And basically, it was a standout win for Leonard to become the junior middleweight champ. Of course, you know, he goes down to welterweight, and he and Hearns have that epic classic back and forth in 1981, where both fighters fight every single which way possible, but it was Leonard going to the extra gas pedal to stop Hearns in the 14th round to win the undisputed welterweight championship. But the story of this is we've seen it all the time in the sport. When you have a chance to take care of business, you better take care of it, because you could lose out on millions and you can lose out on opportunities if you don't. Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns shared the same doubleheader on this day 44 years ago in the Astrodome, each taking care of their business in different ways because they knew they had a massive payday for that super fight of September 16, 1981. If you don't take care of business, you could lose out a lot. I could point to a boatload of examples. Actually, one of them recently, of course, was Ryan Garcia losing to Rolly Romero. More likely lost out on a blockbuster rematch with Devin Haney, which could have gotten him several $1 million. You got to take care of business, even though something in the boxing world is perceived as a cherry pick. Doesn't matter if it's a cherry pick or not. You better take care of your business when you get in that ring, because if you don't take care of business, especially against cherry picks, you could lose out a lot, and you can lose out a lot bad. I can point to a boatload of examples because the opportunities are there. It's about what's in front of you. You better take care of what's in front of you, because if you don't, it'll cost you a lot. We've had many examples of this throughout the history of the sport, and I mean many examples. But that's why Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns were so great. They knew about that opportunity, so they both handled their business, granted in different ways. Hearns was just on a wipeout over Pablo Baez, which was basically a keep active fight for Hearns as he was preparing for Leonard. But Leonard had bigger goals in mind, obviously, with the Kalule fight having the junior middleweight title. So what happened there? Kalule did all he could to survive, but Leonard, being the focused all-time great that he was, his ability to adapt, got the stoppage win on Kalule, was a junior middleweight champ. Got to take care of business first. That's what they did. I could point to a lot of examples in the sport. That's probably the perfect example of it. And that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. For those of you who missed this show tonight on the social media platforms, this show will be uploaded on the Apple Podcasts app as well as the iHeartRadio and Spotify apps. You can tune in anytime on any of my social media networks. You can find me out on those there, especially on the X platform where this show is going to be live now on a nightly basis. About turning this thing into almost like a nightly sports talk show because that's the big thing over here. So you'll be seeing me more often. Looking to take the show to bigger platforms down the line. So if anybody knows any bigger ones, especially the ones that, like social media or Apple or iHeart or Spotify, let me know. And as always, make self-care your number one priority in life. Always take care of yourself first before you take care of anything else. If you take care of yourself first, good things will come your way. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in life is going to matter to you unless you take care of yourself first. Self-care is always the priority in life. That should always be. I don't learn that the hard way. Have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless. And I will see you all tomorrow night.